women throughout the world. She's looked upon as a spiritual goddess. If you were to summarize her, how do you see her? How do you see this woman in life? How did she become famous? Why do we know about her?
Yeah, I suppose more than anything, like women don't, do well in history yet from that period. So how does she come to this? And it's because of this devotion attached to her, which means that the miracles associated with her, but she was this kind, generous, brilliant human being who exemplified this new faith that was Christianity. So you've got these great saints, we call them, but really these were these very powerful figures selling this new faith to a pagan land, and the devotion to them becomes almost, in one way, it's almost godlike, Okay. One interesting thing about her, she died around, there's 20 dates for when she died, but 523 AD, and one of the ideas I have at the moment is that we're getting support from the council and whatever, is that we bring Bridget home. Her head, her skull, is actually in a church in Lumiere. Now, I'm not saying we bring the physical in Portugal, right? We're not saying we're bringing her home piece by piece, her bones, bring the idea of celebrate it by, again, turning to look at her life story and use it as a gathering, a tourist, and use it for the artists, the musicians and whatever, and celebrate this remarkable figure.
Well, as Féile Breda has kind of demonstrated, there's a huge interest in the spiritual aspect of her, and in the what she promoted, the peace and all the rest of it. And I interviewed some of the Bridget nuns there a few years ago, and it was fascinating. Just that I always love to go to St. Bridget's well around St. Bridget's Day as well. It is. For one, I don't want to sound like a hippie, but it's special, isn't it?
It is. It's one of the quietest little places in Ireland. You just go and you can be completely alone with yourself, you know, and beautiful little place of solace and solitude. And the nuns, the three nuns, I mean, there's Mary, Rita and Phil. I mean, they have a hermitage, beautiful, gorgeous place to visit now as well. But I mean, in 30 years, they have created Féile Breda. They have reinvigorated that.
They're so open to everything.
Absolutely,
we had the Dalai Lama visit there. And
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so if anyone's interested in St. Bridget's or any more of it, I will put some additional material up maybe on this podcast as well, because I've done a little radio documentary on Bridget as well, so I might attach that. But going back to your own life, Mario, you grew up in Kildare. You're a librarian, a writer, a musician, and a historian. And in recent years, you've written some children's books. And when I say written, I'm using the term kind of loosely, because you have actually written them with the cooperation of children.
Yeah, I suppose part of the job of being a librarian is that it's not just about promoting a book, but promoting reading, promoting writing and creativity. And I had this idea a few years back that when we had the first Readers Festival, we'd have a big big fishbowl, and everybody attending the festival would write one line, put it in the fishbowl, and we'd create a book from it. And somebody said, that's a great idea. I know someone in Dublin who could do that. And that irks me big time, because we have so much creativity in this county. It really drives me nuts. So I parked it, and a year later, I brought the idea to a school as part of One Book, One Town, and I said, I want to visit 4 classes, and I want to use them to write a book. And that idea has now developed into 4 different books.
4 books, and we were talking about it before we start recording. And basically, these 4 books involve you going into a school. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Going into a school, give them a scenario, give them a place maybe or something like that, and let them develop what language comes to their heads or what stories come to their heads. You write it, and then with the cooperation of David Butler, you put the illustrations together, and you've done 3 of these books. Is that right?
4.
4 of these books with all the same procedure.
All the same procedure, and 2 were in Kildare, which it would be easy enough for me because they're based around historical locations and geographical locations and so on. But like I also did it in Listowel and Roscommon, and I knew absolutely nothing about Listowel.
So you're visiting the schools in these locations.
Yeah.
Now, when you went into the schools, did you ask them to start a story, or did you come in with a little bit of a...
Same thing. What if you ask anybody what's great about Cara, and they'll go, oh, there's nothing happens in Cara, and unless you mentioned your man out the road that got killed in the battle, oh right, okay, and that's
very
where
true,
it goes.
I do songwriting in school sometimes, and it's true. If you stick to the local, you're always going to get something. You know?
There's always the point I always make is like, who needs Hogwarts? If you think about it, J.K. Rowling wrote this amazing series of books, and she made up all these beautiful, beautiful places and whatever. But we have them everywhere. I mean, where does the word Cara come from? Where's Kildare, Church of the Oak? You know, Coleman's Wood is Ross. Come on,
is that a place
which is it's Roscommon. That's exactly it.
Right.
And one of the greatest kind of testaments to the efforts, I suppose, we did was when they amalgamated two of the schools in Roscommon. They called the school Coleman's Wood.
Lovely.
You know, which was to say thank you to us and acknowledge the fact that we had actually done this with the kids.
Is this in Roscommon Town?
In Roscommon Town, and we did. I had no idea. They put me in a car and they drove us out into these strange like places, which Castlereagh and everything, and I'd never been before.
The big there's big historical places out near
there's the caves of Awinagat and Ratcrohan, and they're all in the book. Because it's like, if you wrote a book about Kilare, you're going to include, like what I did, like it was the Curragh. You have to have the Curragh, the Gibbet Rat, all these places, and they're great names. You know, we don't have to invent Hogwarts when you can use the word Gibbet Rat. I want to know what that is.
So you get the book, the first time that you put the book together, was it in Kilare School?
Yeah, do fish wear pajamas? I walked into the class.
Did you have that in your head before you went in?
My mother actually said that line to my child one time. That my eldest daughter is Eve, and she said, they were looking at the fish in the pond, and she said, do fish wear pajamas? And I thought it was daft, hilarious. I parked it in there somewhere in my head, and eventually when I walked into the school that day, I said, okay, we're going to write a book, and they all went, yay. And I said, it's called Do Fish Wear Pajamas. They burst out laughing. You have them. And
what age group?
All fourth class. Every time it's been fourth class.
What's that, 10?
It's actually about 9, 10, 10 to 11. And for whatever reason, it works brilliantly. They are completely open to anything. So the first book has space aliens, as you do, and it's got some dead Vikings coming back to life, and
zombie Vikings.
It's got, and Fionn McCool on the Hill of Allen coming over to fight as well. So amazing stuff.
Yeah, and the Hill of Allen. Should we mention it?
Oh well, look. I mean, again, I another line in that same song was, "The tower stands on half of a hill." You know.
I have you here. I might as well ask you. I can't not ask you. What's going on? Is there any possibility that we can prevent further destruction of the hill?
I don't. I think that the problem there is that you're talking about certainly in days gone by, you were talking about a huge employer. And of course that wouldn't be the case so much now, but you are talking about an industry, and fighting that is proving impossible.
Well, there has been various movements over the years.
Yeah, there have, and people get excited about it every now and then it kind of peters out again, and sadly that's the case. We're all kind of expecting nearly the tower to fall in at some stage, but even now there's been more access to the tower in recent times than there ever has been. No, on the other side of the hill. So you can actually climb up through a forest, beautiful, climb up into the tower and look out across Kilare. And that's when it really hits you as well. You know, what are we doing?
Yeah, I think it's, I'm mentioning it because it's come up in your stories, and it's worth mentioning. Fionn McCool was supposedly in myth based on the Hill of Allen. And I think I'll leave the rest of the story of the Hill of Allen for another story.
Leave the politics to another day.
Well, it could be another podcast, put it that way. But so your last book, when was that? Was that 2 years ago? Or?
Last year. Exactly around this time we launched it in June last year. That was called Ghost from the Other Realm. It's a little bit connected to Do Fish Wear Pajamas. You know, one of the characters kind of comes back a little bit older, and she's an assistant teacher or something at this time. But again, amazing, and you've a daughter. I mean, amazing as well. One of the words I hate, misogynist. It drives me absolutely bonkers, you know. And I think really what drives me nuts is that we, as parents and fathers and so on, I mean, you grow up, you give everything, you do everything for your little girl, or your girls as I have now. But I mean, when I was writing the story, one of my favourite characters is Bridget, and it's just that's the way. I never differentiated. I never saw that difference.
And do you use your children as trials for the stories?
No, but I've killed off a couple of friends, and there's a guy in the Listowel book. There's a friend of mine, Gordon Turner. He's a musician as well. I don't know if you know Gordon, but he got killed,
right?
And well killed, as the man says, and it was great fun. I've thrown in people. I've one of the characters in Do Fish Wear Pajamas was a best friend of mine, Gonzo. So what a name. You know.
Where the first thing that I was thinking of when you talked about the process, because it is a very unique process, it's a very liberating process in a way, but it's also there must be some ego in there that's going, what if this turns out to be shite?
Well, no, honestly, I swear to God, when I don't know what it is, I love to do it and finish it and make sure you do it to the best of your ability, no matter what it is. And you know that. You have to do that. I mean, there are times you want to walk away from a project and whatever, but if you let it beat you...
But I guess the liberating part of it is that from the start you know to deal with this project. Yeah, it's not like you start the story and then you let the kids take over. It's like they own this story from the start.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about it is, you actually have to have a lot of input into it and you mould it, but you do involve the kids. The greatest launch I've ever been at, there were a couple of hundred people. All the kids turned up and we gave them all a free book. But I still meet those kids, and they're now grown up, and they say, "Oh, remember that book we wrote with you?" And that's amazing. That's amazing. I mean,
it's the whole obstacle of, will I ever write a book? Will I ever write a song? Will I ever write a play?
Get up
it's
off
gone
your backside.
But it's gone from them because they've done it already.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about it is, we've done this with loads of people through all the years, I suppose, with this part of being librarian or involved in the library and arts. And we've a great library and arts service in Kilare, but really what you've got to do is encourage people all the time, provide those supports. There's an enormous amount of talent in this county, and develop it from the earliest time.
So you mentioned the librarian thing, and I try to stay away from the big news of the day, which of course is COVID. And you're situated in Newbridge. Would you would have had? I imagine you would have had people, because the libraries are associated with tracing your ancestors and the records and the historical things that people want to look up, like the Clangory evictions and stuff like that. What's going to happen? People can't get in.
Luckily, so much of that material now is online. Right, we've guys in the local studies, James Durney, the historian, and Carl Kiley and Kevin Murphy, and they're still answering queries. And they're still doing research for people, so people can still reach out to it. We just got to the state where you can now book an hour and a half. You can go in and do research in there, but it's just now beginning. The library's just opened up on Monday, and it's by appointment only. It's really daft and crazy, but of course it keeps everyone safe. And this is what we're doing. I think everybody respects that. I mean, I've been in shops today, and you queue. That's where we are now.
Okay. Have you had? Can you tell me a few of the I mean, I know your service is one of these services will be tracing your roots. I imagine that'll be a service that you provide. Do you have many interesting visitors that come over and say, hey, I think my such and such might have been from Kildare? Or...
Yeah. Actually, the lads are dealing with a kind of a who do you think you are situation at the moment. But we did have a lady coming over from the States there some years back. God, I won't remember her name now. I'll be killed. But she was in that movie with the baseball movie years ago. She is actually a radio host and whatever. But
we'll mention her.
She came back. And that was the kind of the cameras came in and they wouldn't tell her the story that we had found.
Show she was doing, or was it
TV? It was the Who Do You Think You Are series, and her ancestors had actually been in the workhouse in Naas, and they were assisted by a politician who came up with this great idea, Wolf from Naas, and they actually gave money to these people and gave them an option, and they went to America with a couple of blankets and some shillings and salt and whatever else. That's all it was, but they made it.
That's some story, isn't it?
It saved their lives.
The workhouse in Naas came up when I was writing the Devine play about John Devine. It was a fictional little piece that I threw into the play, because I couldn't get the image. I think James Durney might have mentioned the workhouse to me, and I just had. I know where it was. I know the place near where the swimming pool is now.
Where the hospital is.
The hospital is, yeah. I mean, it conjures up horrific images in
Absolutely.
my head, and I imagine the droves of people